We are live, coming live at you from Harrison, New Jersey.
Man, don't you putting
Live.
my business like that?
I'm not putting your business out there like that. Don't even know where we're at. Welcome to another live here at Babbitt Island. Thank you for joining us. Um, yeah, Babbitt Island. I think this talk and this conversation trying to go back into the picker wheel and asking questions and seeing where that conversation goes. Um, if you find any value in the other conversations and other videos that you've watched, feel free to join in with the comments, liking, subscribing. Um, Babylon is the organization we both co-founded, and we have a third co-founder as well, our brother. And um, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about what we do in this video, trying to keep it also engaging in the topics about spirituality. And the title that we chose for this live is "What Are Spiritual Conversations For?"
Yeah.
And having hopefully some real real talk about that, I guess. Right? What do we get out of spiritual conversations? What is the aim? And all of that was inspired by an email that we got from a fellow participant, and it kind of inspired or resurfaced a lot of the questions that we have about spiritual companionship, or companionship in general, I guess. And direction, orientation, where we're going, what is really the goal, what are we doing, all this kind of stuff like started to surface up. So we took all that, hopefully coming up with some questions that we'll choose from the spin the wheel or picker wheel or something, and we can just go at it and have these questions like guide the conversation, really.
Perfect.
Coming from what we think about it, how our experience was or is. Trying to get more into the nuance of spiritual conversations and the goal and orientation of things.
Yeah, because it's all about really, I guess, what we want from this space that we're cultivating, right?
Right.
And what the intention was in the beginning, which you could speak to better, and the invitation was for your friends, and what we've been building since, what it's turning into, and I guess where it might be going.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I think the questions will probably allow us to kind of dive into that as well. Okay, should we start? Should we spin the wheel?
Let's spin the wheel.
Okay, I think I put like a total of 15 questions in there.
How many do you think we'll get through?
Oh yeah, that's facts. Facts. Knowing us, well, I don't know. Maybe we should put it like, oh, that'd be cool if we have some kind of like timer or something like that, where we just hit kind of like when they play chess.
Yeah,
you gotta like hit the timer. That'd be cool. You only got 3 minutes. Okay, this question. Can spiritual language become a substitute for transformation?
Can it?
I
mean, I guess if I'm deluding myself, it can. I mean, how would I answer that question? No, I don't think spiritual language can be a real substitute for what? What's the
for transformation?
For transformation? Nah, because you could always talk about something and not be about it. We could talk about it and it's not an embodied, real lived experience. It's something I read, something I'm hoping for, some ideal I'm shooting towards. But like,
that's what it's saying.
Can it be a substitute for the ideal that I'm shooting towards?
For transformation, meaning like, I think you're saying.
My answer is no, it can't.
Okay.
Now, can people delude themselves and think that? Hell yes, I do it often.
Right, right.
Other people do it often.
Mm-hmm.
Think just because I read something or I know something, this scripture or this spiritual book, Bhagavad Gita, Quran, Bible, that like, oh, it said this.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that,
Mm-hmm.
it's some sort of embodied real life thing for me.
Yeah,
And it's just not the truth.
yeah.
It takes something more than just memory or having read something for
Mm-hmm.
and being able to language it appropriately or
Yeah,
correctly for it to be an embodied lived experience.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think I would have answered it in the affirmative, meaning like people, we almost um, can substitute it, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
delude ourselves and substitute it for transformation. The other thing that I would add to it is it can guide to
Mm-hmm.
transformation.
Language.
Right? Language.
I
Yeah.
get that.
It can guide for that. I think, changing the language and how we speak to ourselves, changing the
Mm-hmm.
language that we use internally within our,
Yeah.
internal monologue can maybe help prime us
Mm-hmm.
towards transformation. Um, but it's not really the transformation itself.
Right.
It can guide towards that. It can help maybe in that transformation. It can change the way maybe that we look at ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
or be the first doorway that
Mm-hmm.
allow us to go deeper within ourselves, right? Because
Right.
they say the quality, I don't know if that's the actual quote, but like the quality of your maybe inner being or something like that, or your life is related to the quality of questions that you ask yourself, right? And these questions are based on language,
Mm-hmm.
really, right? So the way that you ask yourself these questions, the how you inquire, your
Mm-hmm.
self-inquiry
Yeah.
process, is language plays a big part into that.
Agreed.
It's not necessarily the end goal, kind of like what you're saying. Like it's not, having the language doesn't necessarily mean you've been transformed,
Mm-hmm.
right? However, like I said in the beginning, I think language can guide the individual into a different way of perceiving, a different perception, how they relate to themselves, how
I
they
agree.
relate to other people. Yeah.
It's kind of like, don't mistake the tool for, I guess, the treasure.
Yeah. Or if you read a menu in a restaurant, it's not the same as you eating the
Exactly.
food.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it can be used. It's a powerful tool. Actually, it's a very powerful tool.
Mm-hmm.
How you formulate the questions, how you inquire about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
how you inquire about what is happening really.
I agree.
So language plays a big part, and it becomes dangerous when it takes over and substitute, and
For a real lived
for the
experience.
real lived experience. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that was simple enough. I like that. Okay, so I'm starting with language and substituting for what is real. And now the second question is also kind of in the same realm of language, but this is more, I guess, more practical, which is how do we resist becoming, quote unquote, beautiful language floating above real life?
Can you go into what that means more for me? How do we just beautiful language floating above real life? What's real life as opposed to the beautiful language? Kind of like, well, give me an example of what it's trying to say.
It's more in depth, more nuance of the question that we just answered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having language be a substitute for transformation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Real life, kind of like it's that transformation is direct contact, direct experience.
Yeah.
And resist becoming beautiful language, meaning like eloquent language, philosophical language, psychological language, spiritual language that now is just floating above real life, meaning we're just occupying the space of language rather than real contact
Yeah.
experience. How do we resist that lure, that confusion, that comfort of staying in the beautiful language rather than going into real life, quote unquote?
I don't think they're diametrically opposed to one another.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like, as long as language is understood as the tool, as long as it's understood that's something to use, to be used to be in relationship with,
Mm-hmm.
it's the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the destination. And so right now, if I'm talking to you, what is it about? It's the intention is to have mutual receptivity,
Mm-hmm.
mutual connection, to be seen and heard, to see you and hear you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that how I'm using language with my inner world or my
Yeah.
inner thoughts or the books and things that I read? Here, the goal is connection and relationship.
Mm-hmm.
When I use language for any of those other reasons, including spirituality, is the goal relationship?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if the goal is relationship, then that tool of language, like you said before, is purposeful, is amazing. It's, you know, it can be used to build up structures that easily allow us to cross the bridge of not being related to interrelationship,
Yeah.
you know, or the other way, it could completely destroy relationship.
Yeah.
It's a tool that has to be used intentionally, I think. Um, and so maybe this idea of it beautifully floating above real life um, is not the imagery that I would want to live into,
Mm-hmm.
but I would want it to have to be, I would want language to be a tool I use to be in relationship with real life,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
beautiful or not.
Now, yeah, I get everything that you're saying. How do we? Because here the question is more about the how, right? How do we? Because the thing is, it is easy to fall and to um, wanna occupy a space of just the language, right?
Mm-hmm.
And confuse that for real life, right?
For example, the menu idea or the
Yeah,
food you brought up.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. How does one? How do we resist staying in that comfort of knowing the language, being so um, deeply familiar with the language,
Mm-hmm.
right? But never actually experiencing real life, quote unquote, meaning no direct contact with life. And that doesn't have to be when I say, um, I'm not talking about like some constant epiphanies or, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not speaking in a quote unquote mystical sense, right? Just actual presence,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to life and transformation, and somehow the idea of action comes to mind as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the difference between them, between being floating or stuck in that beautiful language,
Mm-hmm.
then contact with life. How do we resist that? How does one? Yeah.
How is contact with life defined in this case? How would we define it? And what is it analogous for? Or is it analogy, or is it spoken very directly in that question? Like, is contact with life synonymous with sort of this contact with God or the divine, or do we mean it here in terms of, like, you know, um, staying in some narrative in my head but not living it out in the world?
It can be both. It can
Mm-hmm.
be both. Um, that's the thing about beautiful language is that somehow it gives the idea of house of mirrors, or
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just nice, but like you're not really you can't really touch what
Yeah.
you're seeing in a way. So but it's so what's the word, uh,
Seductive.
seductive. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much, so beautiful.
Yeah.
um so what is it, I don't know what it really means when it says uh, real life, but it can mean contact with the divine. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be in that way. um
Mm-hmm.
Real life, uh there's an the way that I see it, I think, is more like an honest connection or an honest relationship with life.
Yeah.
There's a somewhat a level of maybe curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
maybe openness, receptivity, maybe uh, acceptance, maybe kind of like here I am, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
contacting with reality in that way, um, and not being stuck in the beautiful language that now it's not even a tool anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but more of a rigid. It starts to become the golden cage,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
I feel like in order to answer this question, like from this perspective, and the question is again,
How do we resist becoming, quote, beautiful language floating above real life?
hmm, I think that when I think of real life, I think of it in two ways, right? I think life to me is people, places, and things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm relating through language to different people, places, and things, how much emotional honesty can I bring to the conversation, to the space?
Uh-huh.
To me, in that space where there's emotional honesty, vulnerability, courageousness, realness, where that is shared, that is anchoring these beautiful words into real life,
Yes.
you know, because you can't share everything with everybody. Like there are people, places, and things where this beautiful language, where this connecting and this
Mm-hmm.
relating, um, is more sweet, more authentic, more nourishing.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at, let's say, connecting beautiful words to real life, and if I look at real life as how much of my transcendental, ineffable, deepest sense of self nature I bring into living life,
Yeah.
and when I say bring into, we already know we are that already. There's no real such thing as bring into. I mean it in terms of how much of this peace, this divine nature, can I bring into the surface level
Yeah, can it
of my
manifest?
can manifest in my
Mm-hmm.
life. Um, I think that has all to do with using language to transcend itself. One of my mentors, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, says that any activity that transcends itself is a technology of consciousness or transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
And what transcendence is used for is to allow the mind, the words, thoughts, narrative, personality to be aware of itself at deeper levels of its manifestation until it gets to its source.
Mm-hmm.
And that source, he posits, is the home of all the laws of nature. It is our deepest sense of self. It is the absolute. From contacting that using any technology of transcendence like meditation or whatever you might have, it allows you to come back into waking life, live life with people, places, and things with more of that value,
Mm-hmm.
that peace, that creativity, that
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, that sweetness, that warmth, that fire back into life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from that perspective, that's what anchoring beautiful words or language into the real or
Yeah.
real life is.
Yeah.
From those two perspectives, that's how I would engage with that
Mm-hmm.
question.
Yeah. I agree. I totally agree. And I think from that space of manifestation, quote unquote, beautiful language
Mm-hmm.
becomes every language becomes beautiful language in that space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of expression or manifestation become when it's real, the language kind of like becomes alive
Mm-hmm.
itself,
Yeah.
right? So it no longer is stuck uh, or floating. An individual is no longer floating above, quote, real contact with life and the experience itself, and they're just occupying that space there. But rather, if they're coming from the inside out and manifested from that space, every language, every gesture actually becomes honest and real and beautiful and all of these things, right? These qualities that somehow we put on some kind of value system, right? Truth, love, beauty, all of these things. So I agree. And in order to resist that, as it's saying here, how do we resist it? Transcendence. This also talking about that, bridging that gap between the inner and the outer, right? Like having a way of manifestation that's going from the inside out and moving in that direction, rather than vice versa. I love that. I love that. Look at us going through these questions, man.
More efficient as we go, right? Learning each week.
Yep. We'll be like 2 hours
on one question.
No, but it's good. Sometimes, that's how it is. Okay. I like these questions because there's somewhat of a thread about the aim and the orientation of what are we searching for, quote unquote, right? What are we doing? There's a thread within these questions, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we can explicitly, touch on a lot of these points. This question is saying, is there a danger in reducing spirituality to self-improvement?
Wow.
Right? Which I think this touches on, maybe it touches on the topic itself, right? What are we searching for in spiritual conversations?
Yeah.
And is there sometimes confusion, between, is there a difference actually? Is there a danger in reducing spirituality to self-improvement? Is there a difference? Is there not? Do people come to spiritual conversations hoping for spiritual self-improvement, but clothed in a different language?
Yeah.
What is the danger? What is the difference? I think it's really, now it's kind of like going a little bit closer to that aim.
This question, man, this question is what are you thinking?
Everything's spiritual. No, I'm joking.
No,
I know exactly what you're going
Yo, this is exactly what I was gonna say.
I know,
I'm like,
I know.
How do I say it and have it not lose any gravity in which I'm trying to say it? Because some people can hear that and think, oh, it's all oneness, it's all everything's spiritual. But honestly,
I love it.
That's what I see. Just from my lens, when I think about this question, ask it one more time for me.
Is there a danger in reducing spirituality to self-improvement?
I don't even think that's possible. For me, there is no such thing as something spiritual not going on. The breath that's moving through my body to make these words, to form anything psychological or so-called spiritual, is spirituality happening now. I can feel it. I see it. It's how we breathe, how we move. Anything that's happening is not separate from that. But if I was to try and squeeze my foot into this small shoe of separating psychology and spirituality, okay.
But let's say
I can speak to it.
Yeah. Let's say somebody who doesn't see the world the same way that you see it.
I get it.
Right? Would there be danger? Is there some kind of reduction? Then are you saying, is the goal to kind of reach to this understanding that you're having of everything is spiritual?
I don't think, if it is a goal, I don't think you can logically or somehow in your thought life come to it. I think, if this is even a goal or the right lens to see things through, you come to it in your own time, in your own recognition. You start to realize, like, the trees blowing in the wind, the things growing, the sun in space spinning, this rock we're on spinning, like everything, somehow it becomes a lived thing for
Yes.
me. Maybe
A
that's not
lived
the case,
perception
yeah, for everyone.
and movement. Yeah.
So when I hear, or let's just make it about me for a minute. Like, if I'm speaking to a counselor or a therapist about some grieving I'm going through, about the loss of my family member or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, that is not separate from a spiritual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're speaking to me, through their lens, like,
Here
death
are
is
the
a part of
tools, and
life, and here are the tools to get through your grieving,
mm-hmm.
and you know what I mean, be with it, don't force it, cry when you need to. Anything
Yeah.
that this professional would
Mm-hmm.
tell me in their psychological world, to me, is not separate from spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say I see a psychiatrist instead of a psychologist, and the psychiatrist is giving medications and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even those things, my choice to engage with that or not, or how I would engage with those things or not,
Mm-hmm.
still is somehow not separate from the conversation of spirituality and stuff like that. But for the sake of this question, is there a danger in
Reducing
reducing
spirituality to self
spirituality into
improvement.
self-improvement? Um, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
But from a specific space, I think the danger is for people who do have mental health challenges
Mm-hmm.
using spirituality as a spiritual bypass and not maybe getting the help or assistance they need.
Mm-hmm.
They need.
Mm-hmm.
I think the danger is in that direction, rather than someone not waking up to a spiritual reality or truth that they can
Mm-hmm.
get
Mm-hmm.
at some point in their spiritual journey.
Yeah.
If I'm reducing spiritual journey to something separate from this psychological journey,
Yeah.
I think the danger is in what that does to our society when people spiritual bypass,
Mm-hmm.
reducing spirituality to over here in this compartment. Meanwhile, all types of things are going on in their life or in the
Mm-hmm.
world, related to hunger and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
So
economic
you're
stuff.
seeing it in the flip
Yeah,
way, right?
yeah. There is a danger, but the danger is not to their evolution in spirituality. The danger is pointing to the ability to function in reality as a whole.
Yeah. So you're seeing it as not reducing spirituality to the danger is not in reducing spirituality to self improvement, but rather the danger is in using spirituality to not self improve.
To bypass self improvement.
Right.
That's how I see it. If I have to separate the categories like that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. The challenge is, I think, maybe this is the thing. Like, the terms, when we say spirituality, what do we mean, right? And for you, you're saying everything is spiritual, right?
I'm not saying that because of how it sounds, but
no, I understand. I'm saying because I agree in that in that from that lens in perception, right? Meaning every decision, every interaction, every relationship. When I say spiritual, there's a sense of sacredness. That's what it means to me. There's something that's sacred, that is beyond the given face value of which I am interacting with, right? So that's when I say everything is spiritual, I mean, there's this perception of engagement, there's this perception, and then the engagement that there's more than what the eye can see, in a sense, right? And in that way, everything is spiritual. Everything has a dimension that is sacred, that kind of pulls me towards with a level of curiosity. When I hear when I hear a phrase like self-improvement, what comes to mind is this modern if we were to use that, right? Modern language of um, maybe somewhat within self optimization, hustle culture, um,
Hmm.
this this kind of language of like you gotta optimize your schedule, you gotta improve, you gotta create systems in which da da da. It's very there's a very analytical approach to it, which
I
is
see what you're saying.
you know the the whole idea of quote improvement, right? There's a system. I'm gonna see myself as a system, and I'm gonna improve this system by upgrading the system, whatever it is, and it's just like this is what I'm doing in order to do that. So, is there a danger from this lens that I'm speaking? I do feel that there is a danger in reducing spirituality to self improvement because in that way, and how I just described, it's taking it's taking away the sacredness of reality and reducing it to face value and utility and only in utility. So um, I do see a danger in that kind of reduction. So kind of like same coin, the other side of what you expressed.
I get what you're saying. I guess what I would say to that is if someone is doing that, they're not actually doing the reducing. They can't, this is my projection. They can't help it. They can't almost be any other way. It's a, it's a, it's a them not knowing what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like if somehow someone is, I don't, this is maybe this is very biased. I don't know if someone can have the taste of those things that that we're describing or pointing to, and still decide, oh, but I'm gonna put this and fit this in these boxes and da da da. If someone's in that place,
Which place you're talking about?
in the place of just optimizing and hustle culture and just gotta like, self improvement in the way that you described it, it's because, in my opinion, they can't see any other reality.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that it is also synonymous with whatever other people are calling spiritual and stuff like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
their perception is constricted to these values, these intentions, um, because that's where it's at in capacity at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be those very things that they've, let's say, reduced spirituality down into to wake them up or to a larger capacity of perception.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes very aggressively or sometimes sweetly. There is this phrase that another instructor of mine would say that, like, when the so-called small s self is out of alignment or symmetry with the big S self, then the big S self acts with emininity, I think he said, toward the small S self, aggression or in a means to kind of snap it out of or expand the capacity. And I got to be very careful with this because this could go into like, people thinking self-blaming or this is not where that's coming from. This is just a perspective to say that when the perception is constricted, the person's not doing that intentionally. That's a stage, a rung on the ladder on the way to their expansion, more expanded states of perception. They're not intentionally reducing spirituality down to a compartment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is how they phrase this question. It would be like me knowing I have $1 billion in the bank and intentionally deciding to, I'm going to live as a homeless person. Like you don't taste that and then say I'm still going to just live like this unless
People do that.
I'm going to live like a homeless person. I have $1 billion. I don't know where that's happening.
There's this idea of millionaire next door. Have you heard that? People having millions. They live in the suburb. They drive old cars. Like that kind of.
But my analogy is pointing to desolateness, homelessness, as composed to absolute abundance. Not like I have absolute abundance, but I'm going to live below my means just because. I'm talking about a person not knowing that they're home. In the analogy, they're homeless, but not aware of
Not knowing that they're rich.
They're rich. This would be someone who's, just pouring all things into this idea of hustle culture because that's the means that they have to survive or be with themselves. That's them not saying, "Oh, I'm reducing spirituality."
Mm-hmm.
You, if spirituality was a compartment or is a thing, this expanded perception of it, you don't taste it and then you're never the same again. It's never
Mm-hmm.
you can't like crawl back into, if you were a chicken and crawl back into the egg and put the pieces back together and be
Mm-hmm.
like that again. The egg is shattered.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's no more. I'm gonna do this way. I mean, I guess you can try, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that like someone who is experiencing something like how we're describing in terms of spirituality
Mm-hmm.
and its sense of expanded perception,
Mm-hmm.
even a little bit, is not going to be able to put that genie back in the bottle. It's not going to. I'm going to reduce this. No.
Yeah, but I think the question is more on a general sense of, um, which goes back to the other questions that we had about language,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, using kind of, yeah, using maybe spiritual language, but for self improvement gains. I think that's how I got this.
Oh, using spiritual language for self improvement gains.
Yeah,
For example,
like reducing spirituality to self improvement, meaning like making going into spiritual discussions or going whatever it is that the person might be seeking,
like I'm
or
trying to be better in life.
yeah, or I want to be more spiritual. Let's say if somebody says that, whatever they mean, sometimes they know what they mean, sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then reducing that to a utility. Now somebody can argue that everything we do and every choice we do is for a utility, whether we're conscious of it or not. um, but having that, or having spirituality to be a means of just self improvement sake, right? I'm gonna.
As opposed to what? Like what is like self improvement as opposed to experiencing God or
um well, yeah, that's the thing of, I see it as, um, this self improvement, not in its core, but how it's understood in the culture as, um, utility, maybe materialists kind of a
mm-hmm.
view. um, what am I getting out of it, in a sense? um,
Yeah.
like in that kind of,
Yeah.
way.
I hear you, but I don't know no one who is not going into whether it's spirituality or self improvement for what they're not getting out of it. Like they're everyone, whether it's they're trying to speak in terms of spirituality or self improvement, they're trying to self improve. It's just that maybe it looks like in the if we're going to use the mainstream spiritual context, it looks like self improvement looks like to them
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe deeper expansion of perception and qualities of the heart or whatever it might look like
Mm-hmm.
in whatever their cosmology is. But
Mm-hmm.
it's again, I'm looking from this lens. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to grow, and whether that growth is framed in a certain way or not is of no consequence to whether their capacity or perception could be aware of what that growth is in terms of its end result.
Mm-hmm.
They might have something in them driving them in a certain direction, and their mind, their language, and can tell them it's one thing, but ultimately, how I think about this, there's something deeper inside them that's trying to unfold,
Mm-hmm.
trying to bloom,
Yeah.
and how they go about gardening that
Mm-hmm.
possibility is often for many trial and error until they find that thing that is somehow in symmetry with that bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, sometimes it's in symmetry for a while, just to for them to get to a point and to show them to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's really self referral, based on that person's experience as they develop more capacity to distinguish what's for them and what's not for them. But ultimately, I think everyone has that inner drive to grow. Just, even if they're not calling it that, even if it looks like something completely destructive, and because of the mistake of the intellect, they start to engage in that. And hopefully that will lead them to some epiphany at some point. But like, either way, something in them is having this conversation, calling it spirituality or calling it self improvement does not change what the human being in this nervous system is trying to shoot for.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean,
whether they call it God or not.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's, there's this view also that at the deepest level, as humans, we're very selfish and we're just trying to survive, right? In whatever way that we do, it's all for survival, whether we call it spirituality, self-improvement, whatever it is, we're just trying to survive and just be alive, So I can see that. From what you're expressing, I think there's this kind of underlining tone of, hey, everybody's just doing what they're doing best in order to survive, maybe grow. I don't know if they might use that language or not, but really just to stay alive and go. So that going from the quote unquote finance bros, who it's everything, self-improvement looks like a very large number in bank accounts, you know what I mean, to a Buddhist, to a monk or something, a spiritual, quote unquote spiritual person who is completely outside of normal day-to-day life and sitting on top of a mountain, and that these two people are pretty much the same. They're doing the same thing. This is what it is. This is how it looks like to this person. This is how it looks like to that person. I can see that. I can see, like, okay, there's people just doing what they need to do in order to survive. I have my own preferences, you know what I mean, in what it is. I have certain ideas, but again, all of these, maybe somebody can argue that all of these are biased because that's what survival, or what it looks like for me in order to survive and live this life.
Yeah.
Hopefully we answered that question
as best we could.
Okay, moving on to another question. Okay, this one, I feel like we talked about this, so let me know if we want to skip this and go to another question. This one says, what's the difference between consuming spiritual content and being transformed by it?
Wow.
Did we touch on this? And let's find a way to orient this to the topic itself, which is being, what are we getting out of from quote unquote spiritual spaces, spiritual conversations?
Yeah.
Is there an aim? Does this question point towards that, the difference between consuming spiritual content? We want to sit in, again, here we're using the word spiritual very often. We both kind of established this idea that everything is spiritual. From my end, maybe I kind of, according to me, is being able to see the sacredness within things. I don't know if you agree with that, or we have something similar, or
I think I would agree with that, being able to see the sacredness in things. But I guess I would just add to that, whether I can see the sacredness in things or not does not speak to whether they're sacred or not.
I agree.
It speaks to my capacity.
Yes.
And as long as as long as I keep pointing to my capacity and sort of not not sort of super project, because I give meaning to my perception and words to things, believe the reality that I'm coming up with. Like, I know enough to know that, like, I'm seeing this reality through my lens,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the best I can do for where I'm at in my capacity.
Yeah.
And so based on that, I'm having a life.
Yeah.
I also know that, I think I know that that's the case for absolutely everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But my ability to see or not see, or call something what it really is or not, does not change the reality of what it is,
Uh-huh.
you know? I have no idea if that was big or ambiguous or abstract, but I feel like I said something. But in terms of in terms of the question,
What's the difference between consuming spiritual content and being transformed by it?
um, when you read this, I think of poetry.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's some poems that I read from mystical poets.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you call them. Maybe some people call them spiritual poets, like Hafez or Rumi,
Mm-hmm.
or some things in Maya Angelou's work,
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine's work. Those poems are words, but they also function in some way for me, for the capacity of perception of where I might be or not, as a technology of transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I read it in, what's that guy's name? Lord Tennyson. When he talks about something, something, I remain, and go on, I'll pull it up. But it's something in those works that does something of a transcendental nature to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's happening where I have a chance to go beyond my already always thinking and thought life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not, it's that is, you know, that is consumption, but it's also
Transformative.
transformative,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Is there a difference between the two?
And those works, maybe, but I think again,
No, for
the
you or for an individual.
I think again that the answer is always based on the person's capacity. For me, if my capacity to read into that work something deeper that triggers a transcendental experience,
Mm-hmm.
then yes, you know, it is both. I'm both consuming it and it's transformational.
Mm-hmm.
But for a person who doesn't have the capacity or the way of seeing that I do in that moment, or
Mm-hmm.
is not oriented to them right, they could be reading gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
And when they read those works, and it's kind of like, so it's nothing for me, you know, or they could actually be reading some gibberish and have a transcendental experience. It's more so about, it's more so, it's more so about the person's capacity and perception and what they
Uh-huh.
can experience in
Uh-huh.
terms of the value of reality
Mm-hmm.
in a lived way, more so than what that work is. If,
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say about the trees and everything. Like, it depends on the capacity that I've cultivated, not just in words or thought, but what experience am I having when I look out the window and see these vivid greens blowing in the wind like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that producing an experience where my awareness, at this level, somehow transcends itself
Mm-hmm.
and experience a relationship with those, with
Yeah.
that, separate from other,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
it has, I think the capacity of the person perceiving is just as important as of the work or the person transmitting. Otherwise, like, you know, someone could be giving you all the gold in the world, but what you receive of it may have nothing to do with what they're saying, and all to do with what you can hear in what they're saying.
Right. And I think that um, that right there is the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The person's capacity or perception.
Right. Or getting that quote unquote content, or consuming that content, and um, it just stopping with the consumption and not doing the transformative mechanic or whatever it is that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that it's that capacity, it just it just stops. You
What
know?
capacity? Capacity of the person.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're consuming. Now the thing is, that difference is in, I don't know, maybe it was like the second question that we talked about, or maybe the first two, about the language or the beautiful language having being floated over reality.
Mm-hmm.
The beautiful language can be the space of consuming quote unquote spiritual content,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just, reading the books,
Mm-hmm.
reading Rumi, and being swept away by the beautiful images and the poetry and the eloquence, and yet it stops there and it doesn't go into the quote unquote, as it said in the other question, real life, or here it's using the word being transformed by it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So now the responsibility, where does is there a responsibility in that, you know
And
in this kind of tension? Is there a responsibility in working on expanding that capacity
mm-hmm.
of perception, or refining that perception, so that the individual or I can read Rumi and reading it, meaning consuming it, and through that experience transformation actually takes place. And now, instead of just having it be some kind of ecstatic state
Mm-hmm.
that reading, the consumption gives me, which now
Mm-hmm.
becomes more like a high, that now
Mm-hmm.
I just want to read more and more poetry because I feel some type of way. And transformation doesn't enter the room, you know? Is there some kind of responsibility in that expansion of perception, or in that expansion of capacity for the individual?
Depends on the individual, right? Like, in my opinion, just because, is it their desire? I mean, I guess that's obvious that it would have to be their desire in order to take it on as a responsibility. But some people don't need that responsibility in order to have the experience. Some people don't need the desire in order to have the
To be
experience.
transformed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the thing. Like, you can approach it as a desire and a responsibility. And again, that falls back on this idea of self-improvement. Like, if you are approaching it like that, is it an improvement on me if I can expand my perception and see the green trees and the way I experience them, and read Rumi and the rest of them the way I experience them? Is that something that I desire? And do I have a tool to allow this capacity to grow? It's a different conversation than if I'm saying, I believe that, that's, since that's my desire and it's what I see as a worthy way to spend my time, that this is for another person to actively engage in expanding that capacity in order to read this thing or consume this thing and have a transformative experience. It's about what is driving that person, because many people are in that, trying to drive towards that, and it's part of the default mode programming of their tradition or their society or stuff like that. But it's not, you get what I'm trying to point at? Am I
Yeah,
saying it?
I think you are saying it. I mean, the big thing that I'm getting is like, yeah, it depends, right? There's a lot of variables, I guess, and it depends on the person, if they want to consciously maybe choose it as a desire, or
Exactly.
consciously choose it as a responsibility, or as a orientation or direction to move into. And
And if they consciously choose it, is that spiritual life or is that self-development? This is where I have, from the other question, like,
yeah. I mean, that's the thing that's about this movement, right? Because you gotta think about, somebody in that state of, okay, or me, okay, I'm just consuming, or I want to read more, I want to
Mm-hmm.
do all that, for what end? This is the question that kind of always comes, for what end?
Mm-hmm.
um, and if I see it as self-improvement, how I said it before, which means devoid
Devoid of sacredness.
yeah, devoid of sacredness, or just utilitarian,
Mm-hmm.
completely approach, then it doesn't fit. So then, okay, how can that be expanded so that the sacredness is at the heart of that
Mm-hmm.
improvement? You know what I mean? And maybe it's just a, uh, which goes back to the other question, maybe it's just a function of language, you know, in building this inner aesthetics of this inner being, the aesthetics of this inner
Yeah.
being, in order to be able to move and see
Mm-hmm.
what real desires are there inherently, if that's such a thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in order
Mm-hmm.
to move in one direction or another.
Yeah.
um, does it depend on the person? Yeah, it depends. Each person would have to, you know, would have to come up with that, their
Yeah.
answer would have to come up with their answer. um,
Just because I wonder, some people, I imagine, can experience that tasting food or listening to Michael Jackson or maybe even playing rock and roll. I can't fathom it. You know what I mean? But that's
yeah,
not my thing.
yeah, the
So,
thing, I mean, you're right. The thing is to be, you know, I think we talked about maybe the idea of spiritual or consuming spirituality. um, and again, the word consuming,
mhm,
the movement is from outer to inner, um, which already there's some kind of a difference there between transformation, which is inner to outer, right? And does transformation just stop at change of perception, or does it go all the way to change in action and change in conduct and
mhm,
change of movement?
mhm,
You know, and if I'm seeing it in that way, or if we're seeing it in that way, then there is a difference
mhm,
between consuming spiritual content and being transformed by it.
mhm, mhm.
Spiritual content can also mean reading the Bible or the Quran or
Yeah.
the
Or
holy
listening to
books,
Michael Jackson
or listening to this
or playing rock
conversation.
and roll. Or,
You
you know what
know,
I mean? Like the you one way you define what was spiritual is by what was sacred. It gives
hmm
you a sacred experience. That's how you defined it earlier.
hmm
Um, and I guess the reason why I keep, I guess, bringing this point out is because certain things, there's sacred things are sacred to certain people differently than others, right?
hmm
Like we automatically put maybe sacredness in terms of religion, in some places, but for certain people, sacredness is a food, is eating, or is their time with their baby, or stuff that's not necessarily always pointed to in society, but could be as deep or if not deeper than what the average person might get when they think of whatever religion they might be in. Like there is aspects of sacredness probably poured out all over reality. And
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
oh no, I'm not
hmm
disagreeing with you at all.
hmm
I'm just bringing it more
Yeah.
out
Oh, what the idea
of
of
sacredness.
sacredness might be
Yeah,
like.
just because we use that as one of the definition to help
hmm
define spirituality, you know. But anyway, that was my point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that depending on what that is, the person goes to that and might not go towards a religion or the poem or nature.
hmm
Wherever they, what they say, that thing that Maharshi said one time. Somebody asked him, "Where is God?" And he said, "God is first wherever you find him. Then after that, God is everywhere."
hmm
You know,
hmm
I think that's a sort of a natural development of like seeing sacredness in one thing. You begin to see it in so many things, and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you don't look at what's destructive or painful in society. It just means you can really see life
Exactly.
moving everywhere, and that
hmm
takes on a level of beauty or a divine sacredness that
Yes.
is, expansive.
hmm
Um, it begins to not be seen as other as much as
hmm
it feels like harmony, I guess, and diversity.
hmm Exactly. Exactly. Okay. I don't know what time we started, but it's 2:30 almost, 2:25. I don't know how
We
long we've
probably
been
started
going
like
on.
at 1:15 or something.
I wonder if this tells us how long we've been live, but I think it does.
How many numbers?
Oh, that's just only been an hour.
Yeah. What number are we on?
I have no idea,
Oh, okay.
but maybe I think we did what, 4 maybe, or
think so.
5?
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay. Next question from this picker wheel. Okay. I mean, I'm glad we're okay. Again, we're circling, and I wonder.
Are we becoming an echo chamber?
Yeah, but because I wondered now, even from the last conversation, I can see the difference in how we see things, similarities, but even approaches these things, like the idea of, oh, it depends on the other person. There's the
It depends on the other person.
yeah, like in the last question, where it's like, oh, well, it depends what spiritual consumption is and what transformation is. It depends on the other person's capacity, or on the individual's capacity, and this, I get there's this level of maybe variable. There's always a variable that it depends on the person, and that variable is kind of dynamic. In that sense,
in terms of when you say it's that's depending on that is what,
like the answer or the questions that we're talking about. So it's interesting, we're approaching it in different ways, as far as the variability. Is that the word? Having something to be a variable account. I mean, if that even is such a thing, a constant variable. That's an interesting dilemma, paradox.
A constant variable.
And this, like, okay, here's is there such thing as a kind of like a concrete answer, or an established ground of, but this is my opinion, this is where I stand.
But don't you give that all the time, right?
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, seeing the different ways where, like, sometimes I try to fish for
like what's
for the constant.
Okay.
And your constant is variable, and you know what I mean. So it's
my constant is variable.
Yeah. So it's like, this dynamic, between dynamic and
I guess
circling, circling of it's interesting. So I say all that to say, talking about what are these, what are these spiritual conversations for? What are these quote unquote spiritual spaces? You think about somebody who listens to this, who maybe comes and joins our book club, or comes to the Assembly of Lovers, or goes to our Skool community, right? Should there be an aim defined for that in that way? Which is kind of, this is what this question is pointing to. What makes a spiritual conversation meaningful instead of merely intellectually stimulating? Like, when we go to, let's call it, spiritual spaces, I think at this, I don't know, in maybe just in my circle, I can understand what spiritual spaces are.
How would you say in terms of sacredness, I guess?
Yeah, sacredness. Like, there's a certain attitude, right? So even somebody who goes to maybe a grief ceremony, these would be spiritual spaces. Somebody who goes to static dance. These kind of like within that, it's kind of it's fluid in its way, but there's people are searching for something deeper. It's different than going to a professional networking event, right? Even though we might say like, okay, that's a for the individual. It depends if the individual. So we can say that, but there's definitely a qualitative difference between a professional networking event and a grief ceremony thing, or a circle, a study group that's studying maybe Rumi or studying Maya Angelou, or you know what I mean, or whatever, and whatever is in between ceremonial, ritualistic, and reading books and having these kind of discussions. So there's maybe it's hard to define, but it's kind of like when you see it. You know what I mean? My teacher said, I don't know, not necessarily in this context, but he would use that. He's like, it's kind of like porn. You would know it when you see it. You know what I mean? It was like, what is it? But so what makes a spiritual conversation meaningful instead of just merely intellectually stimulating? Why are people going to these spaces that are so-called known in the culture as spiritual spaces?
Why?
Are they should it be an open-ended inquiry? Is there, or should there be a direction orientation that this quote unquote spiritual container or spiritual conversation or spiritual space is trying to cultivate, so that we can know, or maybe the individual know, or we individually would know if there is a difference of having that spiritual space than just being intellectually stimulating, where you get this, like, I know I get it sometimes, this intellectual rush. Yeah.
Thank you, man. There's so many directions you could go in with this question. One is I almost wanted to go from the direction of the effects of colonization on what we describe as spirituality and community, and how we relate in what is called a spiritual experience or event, as opposed to a formal sort of business event, right? But maybe that's not the way to approach it. But I'll nod to it, which is there's a reason why certain things are created in certain ways.
In chambers,
And there's a reason why oftentimes let's say the spiritual event or community creates a space of whole person experience. Now it creates the space where whole person experience can be experienced, but it is not necessarily starting there, right? Like oftentimes it's a emotional rush that people enmesh with a deeper sense of awareness.
Wait, pause and repeat that one more time.
Am I going to be able to repeat that?
You said, I like it. I think from what I heard is a person, or these spaces is where somebody can go and experience the whole of the person.
But it doesn't start there.
It doesn't start there.
Oftentimes, some of those spaces are where they go to experience an emotional rush and enmesh it or call it spirituality. And that's fine, because it's leading, or it's trying to, or its intention is to lead to an experience that is beyond emotional excitation. That includes it, but also includes the intellectual value and all other aspects of ourselves. The real event is all inclusive, is whole person event,
Yes.
where religions or all these different tools for what they're calling spirituality is pointing at.
Mm-hmm.
You almost, in my opinion, never find it in the mainstream expressions or events of these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, in my experience, has been something that through practice or through conditioning or through self nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
you sort of rebuild yourself back into whole person awareness and being and
Mm-hmm.
showing up in any space
Mm-hmm.
as that.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, when people also are in these formal event spaces, when they're talking and they're, at the peak of what they're doing in business and stuff like that, you'll find them also describing the same kind of things that people are describing in those emotional spiritual events when they experience something deeper than the emotionality of it.
Mm-hmm.
um, in certain spaces they call these peak events or
Mm-hmm.
peak experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and these are whole person experiences where
Mm-hmm.
all of you have come to the party, you know.
Yeah.
um, okay, so that's a little bit about where I wanted to go with that question, but could you ask it again so I
Sure.
can speak directly to it?
What makes spiritual conversation meaningful instead of merely intellectually stimulating?
I'm probably gonna, yeah. I love this term that our friend gave us in terms of echo chamber because I can see it in how I want to answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is really a similar thing. Like the value is in the capacity I have to bring my whole self, my awareness, my transcendental self, all aspects of myself, mental, spiritual, intellectual, physical self, to the moment,
Mm-hmm.
to the writing, to the language that makes it, um, if you will, spiritual.
Well, one thing that you said that maybe will help me, or maybe will help with kind of like distilling
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about. You said, okay, it's an event that maybe somebody would want to go to, or a space that somebody would want to go to experience their whole self,
Yeah.
right? But you said it doesn't start there.
Mm-mm.
So what does that mean?
People are looking for connection. People are looking for tribe. People are looking for relationship. And oftentimes they see certain places that might help them feel a part of,
Mm-hmm.
feel less disconnected, less
Mm-hmm.
loneliness, less alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the the hope is, I think, the unspoken hope is that it will connect them more to themselves, a relationship with themselves, and to God. Oftentimes, once you get in these different spaces, there's different things you have to go through in
Yeah.
terms of opening up as your whole person.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I guess my assertion is that this is the same thing that is trying to happen in those other formal spaces. You're always trying to bring your whole self to the table. What might be different is supposedly in these spiritual places is that is the direction, that is the theme, that's the orientation.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got to go through the shit that you go through in the formal business world, even in those spiritual places.
Mm-hmm.
The lie is that somehow you don't,
Mm-hmm.
but you do. From my experience, there is still bureaucracy,
Mm-hmm.
there's still differences of opinion,
Yeah.
there's still all the same shit you deal with in these other organizations and places
Mm-hmm.
because you're dealing with humans.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is the case, it's always going to be opportunity to figure out how to navigate the circumstances and see what it means for me bringing my whole self to the moment,
Yeah.
or whether I need to deny some of who I am in order to get these bills paid,
Mm-hmm.
or to be in tribe with these others,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever that looks like, whatever you're negotiating, whatever I'm negotiating with myself to be in relationship with this other or these others, is ultimately so that I'm culturing or conditioning whole person embodiment,
Yeah.
whole self embodiment to bring into the space. Now, with me, I'm trying to do that intentionally as I can. Not definitely, I drift, but that's the intention
Mm-hmm.
that I have,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I see this question through that lens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I do think I agree. Um, I agree with this with the idea of moving towards the wholeness, experiencing one's whole self,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I also see that there are certain conditions or certain spaces that may ignite that wholeness in ways that are more effective than other spaces,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's part of the search,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's part of that search of somebody wanting to experience the wholeness of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe starting at networking professional networking events, and maybe that space, even though the experience internally might still be that challenge of, okay, how can I bring my entire self into this space, but it'll probably be a little bit more challenging
Mm-hmm.
to experiment with that there than, let's say, a space that there's somewhat of a collective agreement
I agree.
that
Yeah.
the wholeness is welcomed. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So in that space now, of course, there's pros and cons kind of to this is what you're saying. Like, if it just stops there, you're gonna have to deal with it everywhere else regardless. And even in these spaces, there's gonna be difference of opinion, there's gonna be difference of the wholeness of oneself, and that kind of communication. And yeah, it has the challenges. And I think in that space, that if and when that person experiences their whole self, now there's more of that self-referential that you talk about, that one can have some kind of a reference point that they can go back to, whether they're applying that reference to the space that they're in, that's quote unquote that tribe or that community or that spiritual space that they were able to experience that there first, or actually now apply it in these other spaces in their lives, and have that kind of um, um, how did you call it? This kind of negotiation, or not negotiation, compromise. What is the word that you said? Self negotiate, like what needs to happen, when, how the wholeness of myself in this situation, in this professional or not, in order to pay the bills, or all that kind of that kind of thing. So yeah, it is tricky. It is tricky because it can also be that emotional excitement or that intellectual stimulation can be confused for an experience of wholeness of oneself, because a particular center or particular faculty has now had some kind of a spark, or being love bombed, in a community is like, oh, it's all love, and getting dragged in it, um, and so there are dangers. And I think, maybe part of the conversation is also about, do these agreements, do they need to be explicit agreements? Does this wholeness, does it need to be explicit orientation? Is the group, or those spaces need a specific orientation and direction about the wholeness of one's uh, being, or one's experience, or one's manifestation, or bringing to the table, or, as you said, bringing the whole self to the party. um, do these spaces require that, or does that now become rigid, where the wholeness is not, or is there some kind of selective in who that wholeness is for? You get what I'm trying to ask?
I get what you're saying. So much of that makes that very tricky terrain to navigate,
Mm-hmm.
especially depending on what you're dealing with as a person. But we brought up a phrase that I just want us to just touch on a little bit, and that is love bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, what does love bombing, according to you, look like in spiritual spaces?
Mm. Um, it looks like um, before even there's really no desire in knowing me, let's say, but it's expressed as, I love you. You're part of this already. You're included in this. You matter. You're all of this kind of stuff. But there's no desire to really know me, and which, and this is interesting because now it goes into like a little bit metaphysical, but knowing and love. Do you know me?
Mm-hmm.
Love me, kind of
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So love bombing is just kind of, it stays at the superficial level.
Mm-hmm.
It shows affection. It shows, or what might look like affection, or it shows um, maybe a little bit of interest or inclusion, that you're already part of the quote unquote tribe. However, it kind of just stays there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's right off the bat. As
Yeah.
soon as the encounter happens, um, there isn't a desire to go
Yeah.
deeper before um, this fluffy language is used in,
Yeah. Or in cases that I've seen, asking you to take on a position or do
Mm-hmm.
work, or
Mm-hmm.
take on the weight of the organization, or
Mm-hmm.
like any of these things where you're being pulled in so fast that you already find yourself with responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
You're already starting to be connected in a dependent way where you sort of need this person, place, or thing or organization as your anchor in identity, because
Mm-hmm.
you're so desperate for connection or affection or some type of camaraderie. Almost this starts to look like the golden horse, and you don't know enough to vet it,
Mm-hmm.
to take time, like have actual relationships, so people's character can unfold over time. um, don't invest so much, but invest enough to taste, explore, feel it out, but not give your whole kit and caboodle in terms of emotionally, psychologically, mentally, to a situation that's so new that you haven't even had time to discern what's the real patterns and things going on in the environment. Because once you're in, it's sticky to step away or step out of when things start to get commingled in terms of your identity, your emotions, um, your money, your job, like where you find value at. And also when you start picking up the language of this different group or person or cosmology, all these things, if you put on too fast as identity, get stickier and stickier to pull off. Um, but a trick is that if these systems, or if you have a technique or a system, sometimes it can provide enough buffer to allow you to not completely succumb to your own thoughts about the connection, or completely succumb to your own emotionality about the connection, or these, the need to be in tribe, so that you can see yourself in general, but yourself in relationship to the other or people or group, and what it looks like in terms of the functionality of your life holistically. I think that's important to
Mm-hmm.
put there. Whether you're dealing, according to me, everywhere you go is going to be people, places, and things. And I have to have enough self awareness to explore and connect in terms of love, but also realizing that people have intentions and shadows that they're not even aware of, so they can't even protect you from. You have to, I have to be willing to engage, but also willing to discriminate, discern what this means in terms of my whole life, and not just what aspect of me is finding fulfillment in this connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, no, beautiful.
Oh.
I wish the mic was centered in there.
Oh.
Okay, wait, how did we get there?
You mentioned love bombing,
Oh.
and it, I guess it triggered something.
Yeah. Where were we? Where were we going with that?
You had read the whatever
Oh.
question,
Uh-huh.
and it was part of the answer, which I think we completed on.
Oh, the direction of these quote unquote spiritual spaces. We were
Mm-hmm.
kind of talking about that. If these spaces require some kind of explicit orientation or explicit direction,
Yeah.
so that one maybe is not necessary, or maybe kind of like what you were talking about, that love bombing, one is kind of like watching out for it. That's the trickiness. That's the thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
because even in how you're describing it, like I agree with it totally, and the stickiness of it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it can also become always having an arm length distance from connection,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what I mean,
I
like,
get you. Yeah.
um, which is, I know, is not what you're saying, but it can also have that, where it's like clear boundaries, and at the same time clear connection. Like that's where the trickiness
Yeah.
comes in, and that discernment comes in, and
And
the space of which, like, that one is entering in.
yeah, it's tricky, because if you're already coming in with a deficit in certain areas,
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah.
Well, but that's the thing, right? That's part of this. It depends on where somebody is coming from and what part of that journey, you know what I mean, and how much is that knowing there, because when somebody says I'm searching, when somebody says I feel spiritually homeless,
Mm-hmm.
what space are they coming from? Do some of them, does that mean that there's some kind of a deficit in some kind of way?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there a desire for connection? Is there a desire, like, all of these things, like, at what point is somebody engaging in such a way?
Yeah.
And um
Emotional self
mhm,
honesty in general is really important,
mhm,
and sometimes I haven't had access to that, you
mhm,
know,
mhm,
and so or sometimes you know different traumas in your life will open you up to certain people, places, and things that you know are not the best for you,
yeah,
but you still can get gold and wisdom and insight and
mhm,
deeper relationship with yourself.
yeah,
It's just a matter of like figuring out like over time what is my real boundaries, and not
mhm,
just based on how I think, but who am I?
yeah,
Like you said, do they know me?
yeah,
And that's the question that should also curve back on myself or anyone's self. Like, do I know me?
yeah,
Is this my process of discovering me?
right,
Right? To even be able to look at it like that, so that as you're engaging at any moment, you can be clear about your no or yes. And
yeah,
at any
exactly,
moment in that experience, you can change your mind.
exactly,
You can pivot. It's really giving yourself agency and self compassion
mhm,
to be a person
mhm,
still figuring things out.
yeah,
Oftentimes, these different sort of love bombing groups, right, want you to be a static thing.
mhm,
So they always know how to engage with you and deal with you and stuff like that.
yeah,
The level to grow over time and have a difference of opinion about something that maybe you guys were cosmologically aligned with, there's no real room for that.
mhm,
Those kind of things,
yeah,
are dangerous in
mhm,
my opinion,
yeah,
because it doesn't allow for me to continually evolve as a person,
Mm-hmm.
based on thoughts, feelings, emotions, and cosmology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important as you're talking to this idea of, maybe we talked about it in some other time, this idea of knowing what the group is for, or what this thing is for.
Mhm.
What, you know um, again, this is where, does it need to be explicitly expressed or not?
Mhm.
Like, okay, this group, this is definitely not therapy, let's say.
Mhm.
This is definitely not remedial work.
Mhm.
This is, let's say, regenerative work, or this is under this kind of umbrella. This is how we define spirituality. We come together to discuss this, to be in this kind of container, to see each other, so that it's well defined container. It's not everything and everywhere, and it's all of it's gonna cover everything in your life. You come here and it's everything. Like, this is a very defined,
Yeah.
quote unquote, container, that everybody who's coming to that container knows exactly what the container is for and
Right.
what function to play in that container. Kind of like a symphony or
Mhm.
a band or something in that regard. Like, come together to practice music. I'm the percussionist. This is the piano player. That's the celloist.
Mhm.
And everybody kind of knows. And yet, at the same time, the celloist is improving the percussionist when it comes to rhythm, and vice versa,
Mhm.
or melodically, or there's a harmony and synthesis that's happening in the group, and yet there's a clear idea of what the container is for. And I feel like this, more and more about these, let's call them quote unquote spiritual. Again, we're using that word because that's how we know how to define it, I guess, or talk about it. Communities that are, they're everything and all of it,
Mhm.
um, which maybe that person now goes there and experience the wholeness of themselves, or can bring their whole self to the party, but the boundaries are so blurry that they're now involved in every part of your life, and you're unwillingly, or sometimes willingly, because of what you said about desperation and stuff like that, being
Mhm.
dissolved in that way.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're just wearing all white in a group. No. Oh,
My shirt is yellow.
I was
First
playing
of
with you. I
all,
was playing with you. That was beautiful.
I was gonna say also about this, like another form of it too is, I don't know. I guess I can say this, like, because it could look different too. Like, be careful for those who might want to bestow leadership on you immediately, or make you their guru, or
Yeah,
make
yeah,
you
yeah.
their leader, or somehow
Mm-hmm.
give over a certain level of responsibility to you.
Yeah.
Teach me. I need you to, like, give that some time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
see what you're really dealing with in yourself that might be attracted to that kind of thing, Antoine.
Yeah.
Or, you know, what this person's intentions really are.
Mm-hmm.
Because over time, things do reveal themselves, But if there's no time in them just making choices, without doing a real self-assessment of myself, and also the situation, and also my life functionality,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, count the cost,
Yeah. Yeah.
of what you're approached with, and what the real invitation and
Mm-hmm.
real recognition is.
I love that. We have a question
What?
that says, "Great talks. Do you guys think on the path of spirituality, resistance should be experienced?"
Wow. Okay, that's
On the
new.
path of spirituality,
Good question.
resistance should be experienced.
Should be, meaning from us, from other people, from God, from
Mm-hmm.
how do you hear this question? Or if you're there at the moment, you can tell us what you
Yeah.
mean by resistance should be experienced through a person or through just yourself. How are you meaning this question?
Yeah, the way that I hear it, at least if they're still here to answer, clarifying, I guess, um, spiritually experiencing resistance. I'm not sure. My mind goes to, um, well, here it is. Oh, coming from Sufism side. Yeah, that's where my mind went.
Ah,
They call it nafs. Yeah. So
ah,
my mind went into that. Um, Hearing the word resistance, I hear the word, quote unquote, struggle, the
mm-hmm.
nafs, or
Define nafs, please.
ego, or
Mm-hmm.
soul,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. Uh, this is very interesting because, okay, here's the cosmology. So this is
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of we can be on the same page. Struggle or maybe resistance, who I see it as maybe struggle, quote unquote, within the nafs, which is the Arabic term would be mujahada, or
Mm-hmm.
as you call it, jihad al-akbar or something like that.
Oh, greater
Um,
jihad.
Greater jihad,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mujahada or jihad al-akbar, which is this struggle against the ego,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or resistance. This is this is like the first taste or the first step. I don't like to use the word step because it implies linear,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's one aspect of the dynamic on the quote unquote path.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have tazkiyah, which is purification,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now you're kind of going slightly deeper or maybe slightly more broad or more larger, depending on what, up and down, whatever it is. And purification. So now uh, the movement is no longer within the struggle or the resistance with the ego, but it's in uh, purifying in a qualitative level of purification or change or transformation. And then you have the last, I guess, quote unquote, tasfiyah, which is clarification, right? This is also might be connected to the word Sufi,
Mm-hmm.
right? Safa, clear. The mirror of the heart is polished completely. It's cl- yeah, clarity, clarification. Where when we talk about the difference between states and stations,
Mm-hmm.
now there really is station. There's what's the word they use? Establishment.
Mm-hmm.
Clarification has established itself. So struggle or resistance to see that, should it be, is it necessary, I don't know if it's a should, it definitely plays a role,
Mm-hmm.
right? To say I'm gonna do raw vegan,
Mm-hmm.
it's a struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? When all these other foods are available, and to say I'm gonna do raw vegan,
Mm-hmm.
that is a way of quote unquote struggle against the ego.
Mm-hmm.
When your conditioning or my conditioning is for I have a sweet tooth, and now I'm choosing consciously, God willing, consciously to do raw vegan.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm resistance, or not resistance. There's a struggle. There's a friction that's being created. There is conscious suffering that's being created in that way. That now I'm expanding my capacity and hopefully my perception and rewiring my neurological pathways in order to let loose of the grip of my conditioning of having a sweet tooth to enjoying raw, vegan, uncooked food, right? That movement struggle is in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I see struggle within Sufism, within the that tradition, or even any that kind of struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather than the struggle that is will get you deeper into the conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
which is, um, you know, I should I should do raw vegan, because it's morally superior,
Mm-hmm.
and I should do it. Um, Otherwise, I am an immoral person, and whatever other consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, maybe the results can be the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the quality of movement in what the individual inner experience is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
One might be colored and infused with shame and guilt, and another one with expansion, mercy, and compassion. This is where the second part, which is tazkiyah, purification, it's a qualitative polishing. I can polish the um, the quote unquote rust on the mirror of my heart, right? The struggle is kind of, I'm taking the stuff that's kind of, it became hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's some kind of struggle, but the quality of it and how I take it, I'm not just having the most rough piece of whatever equipment to take that rust out, and I'm like kind of like beating it out, right? But I can do it in a way that is infused with mercy, with compassion, with love. That's also, it's a purifying quality, and that purification is, according to that tradition, is happening from your higher self anyway. It's from God. God is purifying you. You're not doing
Mm-hmm.
the purification. The struggle is kind of like felt in here,
Yeah.
but that purification is kind of happening to you. And then when finally the that the big stuff on the mirror is kind of falling off, now there's a more of a qualitative uh, qualitative, yeah, attitude. The perception is now has some kind of quality to it when that purification happening. And then when the last little dust thing is out, with that love, and then, okay, here's the mirror. Now it clarifies. Now I can look at myself and then stand face to face with God. You know what I mean?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Like, so I guess this is a long-winded answer to spiritual resistance, or having some resistance on the path, right? I don't know if I won't use the word should, but it definitely is a tool, or maybe um, it, it's a natural movement that it's gonna come out
Mm-hmm.
regardless.
Wow.
The struggle.
Beautifully expressed, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that
Yeah.
question.
Thanks for that question. That's our first question.
Yeah, for sure.
From
Yeah.
from the live.
Yeah. So
How'd you even know that popped up? You can see it from there.
yeah, so
Oh.
some pop out, so it's beautiful. Um, yeah, so I think going back to the questions. Thank you again. Thank you for that. That was beautiful.
Yes.
To kind of go into it, and it somewhat is on still on par with the questions that we've been dealing with about
Mm-hmm.
transformation, really, and you know the path itself, and what is really the goal.
Yeah, the
right?
space,
The space,
and
the wholeness.
communication. Yeah, the goal process. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe because I think we've been going for like 2 hours now, close to almost 2 hours. Maybe we'll do one last question.
Okay, that's perfect.
Try to. It's already 3:08.
All right.
Okay, one last question, and maybe we can hopefully kind of just bring it in and something. Oh man, I knew. Let me see. Oh my God, I knew it was gonna be this way.
What?
This is interesting. Interesting. Yeah, this is gonna take us maybe a little bit longer. but it's good because I wanted this when I saw this one before. This one's saying, what is the difference between information, understanding, recognition, and realization?
Wow.
I don't know. I think this question is above my pay grade. I think it's above, I don't know. Like, I know when I first saw this some time ago, I wanted to like pull up that, the definitions of each one, just to see linguistically what are we talking about. And then, yeah, that's why I feel it's above my pay grade, because
I can look it up real quickly if you want to put in a chat to just give the definitions of each, or do you want to just answer it off top?
no, yeah, you can put it in there.
Put it in the chat so I can copy and paste it.
Oh yeah, I can't. I don't know if I can do that.
Oh, you can't. Okay, I'll just type it.
Yeah.
What is it?
Information, understanding, recognition, and realization. Okay, maybe let me try to take a dig at it.
Okay.
At least from how I I don't know how I understand it, I guess. To me, information is just pretty much data points,
Okay.
right? Um, this whole thing is kind of creating an image of a graph, mathematical graph like X, Y, Z. You have the X-axis, the Y-axis, and information is pretty much just dots on that graph. It's just data points. And that can look like, obviously, depending on the context, that can mean different things, right? Those data points can mean different things. Understanding maybe is the relationship between these different data points. Is the relationship within that information. I think, how are they? How are these data points related to each other? I think that kind of creates some level of understanding. Because even when I look at my life, right, I can look at, let's say, past events in memory, and these can be data points. And when I see how, if I can form any kind of relationship between these past events, it does create a level of understanding within myself. Recognition, maybe it's a broader level of that understanding, and how it what the data points, how they're related to each other, and the now of it. To be able to recognize it now, to be able to how these things appear now. The thing is about when I hear the word recognition or recognizing, is it's already in the realm of realization a little bit, right? Because to recognize it, that means you already know it. It's already, the only difference is that it revealed itself to you in some kind of way, or having aha moment, or having a moment of clarity, when the pattern has revealed itself, and now you see it with a broader, maybe it's a deeper level of understanding, that you can now see the thread and how that thread is in relation with everything else. Realization to me is manifestation, embodiment. All of these, the data point, the understanding of the pattern, the recognition of the nowness becoming real rather than just conceptual or images or all of that kind of stuff. It just becomes, it manifests completely to the surface level. It realizes. Um, that might be a little broad, but that's at least
Mm-hmm.
how I'm coming
Okay.
at it.
And now, what was the question again?
The difference between them.
Oh, it's just simple as that. Well, I feel like what you described is, yeah, amazingly accurate in the way I would see it. Um, can I add anything to that? No, I like the points you made when you said information is, you can see as data points, and then understanding is basically the relationship between those data points. You mentioned that recognition was basically in the now. So I saw that as the ability to now to have those data points, understand the relationship, but recognition being able to know how to use them in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then realization, you spoke as a broader
Embodiment.
embodiment of it. And the action. I
Mm-hmm.
can see that like that. Should I read what
Yeah, let's
Google
see.
has given us about these definitions?
Yeah, the definitions.
Okay, so the four concepts represent a progression of mental processing, moving from gathering raw facts to internalizing a deep, life altering truth. They scale from passive data storage to active, lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
Man, bro, you hit that on the head, man. Information, the what? Definition, raw objective data, facts, or figures. It is external and exists independently of whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Characteristics of it is simply stored. You can have information without having any idea what to do with it. Example, reading the calorie count on the back of a cereal box.
That's a good example.
Understanding the why and how. Definition, the intellectual comprehension of the information. It involves connecting the dots, seeing relationships, and grasping the underlying logic. Characteristics. It moves beyond mere data to logic. You understand why things happen, but you haven't necessarily lived or internalized it yet.
Mm.
An example, knowing and explaining why eating too much sugar causes health issues, even if you still eat sugar yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Recognition, the acknowledgement and identification. Definition, the mental act of identifying something you had previously learned, seen, or experienced. And that makes sense. Recognition, to recognize.
Yeah.
Characteristics, it is the spark of familiarity, connecting an external stimulus, a person, a fact, a situation, to your internal memory. Nice. Example, hearing someone speak about nutrition and thinking, I've heard that before, or seeing an old friend in a crowd and identifying them.
Mm-hmm.
Realization, the aha moment, internalization. Definition, the moment a concept becomes your direct experiential reality. It bridges the gap between knowing about something and actually living it. Characteristics, it transforms intellectual understanding into profound, often irreversible awareness or behavior. It shifts knowledge from in your head to in your being.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Example, experiencing a sudden health scare and fully internally realizing your own mortality, which permanently changes how you live your life. Summary in a sentence. You acquire information, you use logic to build understanding, you use memory for recognition, and you use direct experience to reach realization. Perfect.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
On point. On point. Yeah.
Oh, and did you want to say something else about that?
Mm-mm.
Because I wanted to read that poem or a piece of it.
Wait,
by,
what poem?
The one I mentioned by Lord Tennyson. If I can get.
So we're rewinding back to that moment because
Oh yeah.
you remembered it and I didn't.
Yeah. This poem. Oh, I guess this is the only. Maybe I won't read the whole poem because it's just giving the line. But just for anyone who wants to check it out, it's from the Brook by the English poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, and the line is, "For men may come and men may go, but I go on forever." And when I see that line as this infinite, unchanging, deepest sense of self that we are, that's beyond just the physical bodies, emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. That if there is reincarnation, the self that pops up through every incarnation. And so when I read this line, it's like this infinite, eternal self that we are, constantly jumping through embodiments, whether in this life as different iterations of ourself that we grow into, or whether in different multiple lives. Yeah, just wanted to read
I
that.
mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Okay. I think
we're complete.
almost 2 hours. I think this is complete. Hopefully, we did touch on. I think we did.
Yeah.
Went deeper. Kind of, we stayed a little bit at the general sense, but then went into the nuance
Yeah.
of the, people being in spiritual places and spaces, and why is that, and talking about the dangers of it, and talking about the aim for it. And I think the last question, talking about movement from information to realization, is a good place to end, because even internally that can be a good North Star, if you will, about this embodiment, the wholeness, being experiencing one's whole self
Exactly.
in every space that you go.
Exactly.
It also reminded me this section of a poem from Rumi, where it's like, may home always be at the bottom of the sole of your feet, kind of a sense, like your entire, may your soul always be with you in every room you go, kind of like it's always there, that presence. So I think
would you
moving
say
into that way.
would you describe that as if Baba Ilam had an aim? I think these poems and what we described, that speaks to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even that whole process,
100%.
From information to realization.
Yeah.
And another thing, you guys call it in Sufism, and how'd you describe it, or what's the name of it? Camille?
Oh, Insan al-Kamil.
Insan
Yeah,
al-Kamil.
the whole, which is actually the whole human, a whole, human being. Yeah. Or realized human being, a fully functioning adult human being.
And so that invitation that our friend gave us, do you feel like this answers it, or is there anything we could say more explicitly in what we sussed out today that speaks to it?
Oh, as far as like the aim?
The aim, and the embodiment of it, I guess. Is there anything, or does that?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because at the essence of it, at the core of it, I think that is true. That movement towards, from information towards realization, complete embodiment, complete wholeness of oneself as the goal for really everything that we do. And consciously being in spaces, or being in circles, or communication and conversations that one can move alongside these 4 steps, let's say, or 4 stages, if we want to call them stages, or whatever it is, of this wholeness. The thing is, this is to one of the other points, it looks differently for each person.
Exactly.
The model that I like to use is this model of a beehive. I think I've shared that with you before. This model of beehive, of like these bees coming to the beehive and just sharing honey, or sharing nectar in order to create honey. They're creating medicine, really. So when it comes to Bab al-Alam, and when it comes to the conversations and the spaces that we're holding, it's really just pointing towards that.
I agree.
And to be in a place where that can be reflected, and you can reflect
Exactly.
as well.
I totally agree. And I think that, like, some of the ways that we're incorporating now to do that is the 7-day self-reckoning challenge,
Mm-hmm.
which speaks to this idea of technologies of transcendence. It speaks to the Mahasabha practice of self-accounting,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then the orienting points or perspectives that allow a person to do this self-accounting in the most, um, I guess, self-reflective way.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
what what is it about not only self-reckoning, the program that we're gonna walk through, but also about your own practice that makes this journey from information to realization something you desire and a path that you've chosen right now in terms of Bab and in
What's
terms
the
of your
question?
life in general. Like,
What's the what?
why are you what's the why of you being on this journey from information to realization? Why this
That's a big
container?
question.
Why? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
maybe it's too.
that's a big question. Like, and it's something that which is part of the self accounting. It's something that I revisit more often than not.
Mm-hmm,
Why? Yeah, why? And and the answer changes
mm-hmm,
in each moment. And
yeah,
sometimes it can be, oh, because I want to liberate myself. I don't
mm,
want to be suffering. And sometimes it's because I'm in love. I'm falling deeper in love with myself. Not that these things are different, but qualitatively they are different.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And the at some point there's now, um, when you're cooked, you can't be uncooked. When the earth gets to a point close enough to the sun, it'll get,
mm-hmm,
you know what I mean? There's no escape of that gravity. So, um, that why the answer to that question, it changes.
yeah,
It changes, and it's now I don't know if in essence it's changing, but the quality of it might change,
mm-hmm,
and it's a constant reorientation.
mm-hmm,
Oh yeah, why am I doing this? This constant remembrance. You know, um, why a container? Because that's another part of the question that you said, like, why a container?
Why
The
Baba Island specifically? This container? Why this container? I know you have different containers, but why this one?
What do you mean when you say that? I mean, we created it. It is. Mm-hmm.
But why? Like what? I guess what I'm getting at is this phrase or quote you spoke about. How'd you describe it? What does it say?
Which one?
Choose your companions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Companionship before the path. Choose your companions before the path.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Um, the container itself is, there's different desires in it. Um, Part of that desire is to explore
Mm-hmm.
with other people, to hear what other perspectives are, and another part of that desire is to share, is to, talk about stuff that our friend is asking about. Different, like, it's a relationship of in and out
Yeah.
kind of desire. So really it's to be in relationship. And why, uh, doing it in the specific way? Up until that point, any community, I felt it was just a little bit too rigid for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, if I'm looking for a suit, maybe I'll just create it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Bespoke,
Yes.
kind of doing it in that way. Um, so there's that desire also, in order to have it in such a way that is, to me, there's some clear orientation about that realization. There's a sense of uh, rooted,
Mhm.
and dynamic, kind of like a tree. The roots are in the ground, and then the leaves and the branches can be flexible enough to stand the wind that's coming by.
Mhm.
Um, so there's that desire when the inspiration hit for the door of knowledge,
Mhm.
Bab al-Ilm.
Beautiful. Thank you for
Hmm.
expressing, man.
Yeah, yeah. What about for you? I see
Oh,
once he's here.
what do you say?
Yeah, looking forward for next time. Is there one way to spirituality or many ways? I guess that was
Oh.
some time ago, but we'll yeah, we'll touch on that maybe in the next reel, because I know we've been going on for over 2 hours now. And yeah, thank you for joining. But that we'll save that question. Is there uh, one way to spirituality or many ways? I mean,
That's a good question.
yeah, this is
You
what.
would, I mean, that'd be easy for you.
Oh, many ways. That's an easy one. It's an easy one.
Yeah,
Many
yeah.
ways.
I mean, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
For all the reasons why we spoke about today, I agree. There's many ways. I think spirituality is sort of, it's just embedded in reality.
Yeah.
And
Many.
the what you about to say?
No, good. Embedded in reality, which
And
is
it,
yeah.
and in the body. And so naturally, we're gonna head towards that indescribable, ineffable, and we're gonna call it many different things because we have many different languages and many different geographies and many different things that the mind wants to be able to call it. And systems and organizations and cultures rise and fall based on these languages that we are pointing toward the ineffable with. And so from that perspective, in that lens, there are many different ways. But all those ways are pointing from my lens to the same thing. At least they're trying to.
One way that I agree. One way that Ibn Arabi says it, which I feel like it just very clear, very concise, which is um, the ways, the paths are many. What is it? The paths are many, but the way of truth is single.
I feel that.
Many paths, but the way of truth is one.
I feel that.
So short answer to
yes. Thank you for the question, though.
Yes, absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
We're complete, bro.
Yeah,
let's do this. See you next week.
Thank you so much for joining in, for coming in here live. And if you see any value, or if you experience any value in here, like the video, share it, comment if you're watching this in the replay as a not live, and check out our Skool community where we're diving into self-reckoning, self-accounting as a practice. We're doing a 7-day challenge starting June 7th. So we're going through 7 days of what self-accounting, muhasaba, or retrospection looks like as a spiritual practice. The link is in the description of that, so feel free to check into that. And hopefully next week we'll be back again for another live, God willing. See you soon. Peace.
Bruh.